I'm convinced this whole doc is an evolved version of the Sashley drama. At the tail end of February this year, one of my friends sent me a message on Discord. Girl, have you seen what Unknown Spy just posted? They're calling out a minor on their large-ass platform. What? Bro, they've been kinda stalking this girl for like 3 years. Where? They made a whole ass doc! I was busy with uni at the time, so when I opened the doc she sent me and saw it was over 100 pages long, I decided I'd shuffle this to the back of my mind and deal with it after the semester was finished with me. Unfortunately, nothing ever goes the way I plan, because about 2 days later, my friend sent me a video that went over the doc previously mentioned, and after taking one look at that video, I was thoroughly unimpressed and fed up with the crap that I was witnessing. See, what I lacked to mention before was that the doc was made by a very popular animation meme channel by the name of Unknown Spy, a 27-year-old creator with a subcount of 900,000 people. And she was calling out a 16-year-old, Bumbleart B, or Noi, who had a following barely in the thousands, for plagiarism, stalking, and harassment. Prior to this point, I'd been a casual fan of Unknown Spy's work, so to say that this left a sour taste in my mouth would be an understatement. Not content with releasing an 100-page doc across her social media platforms, one of Spy's friends, Happy Like a Wall, who has almost 300,000 subscribers, created a video, more or less, demonizing Noi further. Thoroughly displeased, I opened Twitter to post a short thread pointing out how this was not only blatant bullying, but essentially two adults with massive fan bases dogpiling an actual child for, honestly, not much beyond being a shitty teenager. The two adults in question would respond by blocking me. Wonderful. At the time, I was pretty annoyed at the complete irresponsibility Spy and Happy displayed, but I was much too angry to decide whether or not I'd be able to take a step back to look at the situation more objectively, which is why when Goat Cato asked if I was planning to make a video on this whole situation, I responded with a maybe. 2 months later, and finishing up finals, I finally come back to the situation with a fresh pair of eyes, and reading more carefully through not only the original 100-page callout document, but Noi's response, as well as Spy's response to Noi, I remained thoroughly unimpressed by what I was scrolling through, and concluded this entire stupid drama was more or less completely overblown, with Spy not only being unable to stick to blocking the child in question, but focusing the doc on trivial things when there were much more serious topics that should have been addressed. So grab a soda, find a seat, and let's dissect this mess of a situation that could have been easily avoided. On February 19th, 2024, Unknown Spy would vague tweet about being frustrated that someone was plagiarizing their work. How long is an artist supposed to be quiet when someone is plagiarizing their work? What if the artist have talked with them and they refuse to listen? They make a fake apology and continue copying. What if this has been going on for 2 years now? The only issue is that they're under 18. However, they've targeted and harassed me. They openly talk about me online while I ignore them, after asking them to stop copying me. Yes, immature behavior, but are we just supposed to look away while they act this way? When is it okay to show that what they're doing is wrong? Isn't it better to learn that early rather than too late? I have not given them any attention for almost a year, yet it continues. All I've been doing is documenting all the work they copied from me. I'm allowed to do that. Now they are moving on to copying my friends and mutuals. Other people close to me are now being plagiarized as well. When am I allowed to speak up and protect my art? Or am I supposed to be quiet about this forever? I think it's so unfair that if an artist has a big number beside their name, they're not allowed to call out small artists who mass copy and harass them. The numbers should not matter. I'm an artist. They're an artist. But they plagiarize me. That's all that should matter. May I clarify that I have evidence of them doing this all on purpose. They encouraged their own fans to raid my Discord server, even if they didn't actually manage to pull it off. They still asked their own fans to harass me and my fans. I have proof this person is targeting me. An artist should not have to live in fear that a harasser keeps getting away with targeted plagiarism and harassment. I have a few problems with this thread. Firstly, Spy attempts to downplay the fact that she's just admitted to stalking a minor back for over a year to collect evidence that Noi was copying her. This isn't just her taking a screenshot here and there when she notices a similar piece. This is her actively comparing Noi's art to hers as soon as Noi posts. Keep in mind, if Spy is claiming to have had Noi blocked for that year, Spy would have had to log on to a side account in order to see what Noi was doing. Secondly, she starts to minimize the effect of her having a large audience by saying that it's unfair when artists have a big number beside their name, that they're not allowed to call out smaller artists who have copied from them. That at the end of the day, they're just an artist and that's all that should matter. But that's not how reality works. Not when you are 100 times the size of the people you are calling out. Imagine if Scott Cawthon had come out of the woodworks and suddenly started making expose documents on games copying Five Nights at Freddy's for a quick buck. Please also note that Spy claims to not have given Noi attention for their actions for about a year when this post was made. Spy is, of course, allowed to feel bitter or salty or however she wants about the situation, and after talking it over with some friends, I'll concede that had she made a short call-out post, I probably wouldn't be here bitching about it for however long this video ends up being. But she didn't make a short call-out post. She made a call-out post over 100 pages long. I'd also like to point out how telling this first tweet is, because it shows her priorities pretty clearly. Throughout this entire thread, Spy has been focused on the fact that someone is copying her and her friends' works. Keep that in mind for later. The comments, of course, ever so biased, encourage Spy to come out with the call-out document. Call them out! Yes, they may be a minor, but it's clear that their intention is to harm you. They need to be put in their place, otherwise they won't stop. Kids have to learn somehow, and you've already done the nice part. Sometimes you just have to be harsh. While it would be proper to call them out, I would have done it differently since they're a minor. After all, some fans might harass them regardless of age, and even if you ask people not to. That's like the hardest part about calling people out, to be honest, especially if you've already blocked. You don't call them out, that's obviously not going to do anything. And if they're underage, it's all the easier for them to somehow cause a shit show, I suspect, which is probably what they're trying to do anyways. I suspect you'll need to make it a legal issue to get it to stop. I feel like this is a situation where you need to speak up and show that you have. To face them head on, publicly, and provide the proof you have to tell them off. Considering the act they're taking is also illegal, once they're of age, you could report them to the police as well. I think I know who you're talking about, and I really do think you should spread awareness about their actions publicly if they continue to harass and copy you and other artists. And so, on February 22nd, 2024, Unknown Spy releases a Google document across their social media platforms calling out BumbleArtB, who they claim to have been plagiarizing them for 2 years. I have been targeted by BumbleArtB since 2021 to this day, with them purposely plagiarizing and copying, not tracing, my art and characters to spite me. I hope these compilations give you an idea of what's going on. There's a lot to show, so I provided a document in replies. Here's the full document of their actions. A few fans would retweet this post in support of Unknown Spy, and some, more unhinged fans would come out of the woodworks speaking against Noi. Already, the start of the doc is really bad. It starts by linking all of Noi's social medias, and I mean every single one. They didn't just go and link, like, a linked tree or card that would encompass all their socials. No, they went in and linked every single social media Noi had individually. Giving the benefit of the doubt to Spy, I'm gonna assume the intention here was to make it easier for people to report the perceived stolen pieces. If I'm being less charitable though, this is a really convenient way for her more rabid fans to find and harass Noi. Like, what the fuck is linking his art fight profile going to do? Not only does this tweet talking about this frame Spy as the victim of a plagiarist, there isn't even a warning not to harass anyone until we're 5 paragraphs into the document. And when we're considering a huge majority of the fans reading this are going to be doing so on a mobile device like a phone, it puts the likelihood of them even seeing this disclaimer even lower. The doc talks about how Noi had been copying Spy and how they had already been told to stop and refused to. This goes on for 3 paragraphs. Before Spy drops the fact that Noi is in an NSFW Discord server with other minors and adults. Noi is an artist who started off copying my work and characters, not tracing, I have to clarify this, to the extent I had to ask them to stop back in 2021. I asked them to stop on several occasions, but they denied any copying and brushed it off as either a coincidence or inspiration, and continued, even though they had said they would stop. If it was a case or two, I wouldn't have cared, but since half of their gallery is either copied or heavily inspired art, I felt like I had to speak up. After I called them out for the first time, they provided a fake apology, said/encouraged people to come raid my Discord server, and planned an entire slander video on me and my server, with the screenshots they gathered from the raid attempt. In short, their behavior became worse. Noi does not own up to anything, and instead of stopping, they're just fueling the fires with lies, hypocrisy, and harassment towards me and my following. On top of all of this, Noi is getting backlash for being a minor who shared and drew NSFW art in a server and on Twitter with adults and minors. Noi actively puts themselves in adult spaces and uses "you can't talk to me, you're an adult" talking to a minor as a poor excuse. They continue putting themselves and other minors in danger online. Please do not go harass anyone. This document is for documentary purposes. Please be civil and explain the situation. Reason and logic are more powerful than hate and spam. The wording for the whole section serves to antagonize Noi without acknowledging how horrifying it is that there are adults interacting with minors in an NSFW space. The paragraph paints Noi as someone entirely responsible, and so turns people away from the idea of treating them more civilly. And yes, Noi is being a shitty kid with the tactics they employ to try and blame adults for interacting with them in NSFW spaces. But we're gonna have to put a pin in this. The next sentence acknowledges that Noi is endangering themselves as well. However, being coupled with the earlier sentences, the fact that Noi is acting completely unreasonable, people are less likely to empathize with the fact that they are being victimized as well, instead focusing on the fact that Noi has, intentionally or not, victimized other kids. The doc then moves on to an original call-out that had been posted sometime in 2023. They had already spoken about Noi publicly before they made their first vague tweet, asking people when it would be appropriate to talk about being harassed. And I'm making a wild guess right now, but I don't think that original call-out gained much traction. So instead of leaving it at that because you'd already spoken out against this plagiarism, you then went and reposted the document and made time to add like 80 more pages to it before reposting. So, when I was going back to check my evidence, I noticed a particular screenshot, namely, one that includes the original call-out document that Spy posted in August of 2023, which not only goes further against her own narrative that she'd been ignoring this minor, who just wouldn't stop harassing her for a year now, but also shows a few interesting replies, as someone in her original thread had already called her out on going overboard. Do I have to remind you what they did? So, does this person still have any of that art up? I browsed their work, but I didn't see much outright copied. Definitely some inspiration here and there, but I don't see much outright copying anymore. They post on Insta, and they have become worse, trying to on purpose irritate me by more blatantly rip off my art. The doc is not up to date since they clearly get kicks from getting my attention. I don't think they care much. I mean, it just seems like in the doc you're overreacting a bit, and then expecting them to leave you alone when you have some points that don't check out. How interesting it is indeed, in hindsight, that you would try to paint yourself as a victim who just didn't want to speak out because they were aware they had a big platform, only to have been shown doing the same shit literally half a year earlier. Anyways, back to the video. The first piece of plagiarism that Spy shows, well, it's not plagiarism. It is quite simply inspiration that an, at the time, 14-year-old made. The elements that remained the same were the sound visualizers on the sleeves, headphones, a crop top with long sleeves, and the pose. If you really want to stretch it, they both have accessories and or decorations coming out of their shirts. The background of Spy's art is clearly meant to remind the viewer of a rave stage. Her character Sploot has headphone jacks as decoration, a pastel rainbow overlay for her audio bars, socks that meld into boots, and an overall green-blue color palette. Noi has a primarily black outfit with much more vivid rainbow colors, arrows that seem to be inspired by rhythm games, and sleeves connecting to the cropped shirt, and thigh-high socks without any boots. This piece was clearly inspired by Unknown Spy, but the artist was obviously trying to implement their own ideas onto the inspired piece. And what does Spy do when she takes notice of this tiny artist taking inspiration from her work and making pieces similar to it? Well, she contacts the tiny artist, who will in no way affect her livelihood, to ask them to stop copying her, of course, instead of just hitting the block button and moving on. I have to reiterate this again. Spy is allowed to feel hurt that people took inspiration from her pieces. Spy is allowed to feel whatever she wants. But if you see a kid taking inspiration from you one too many times and it bugs you immensely, and your solution to that problem isn't just to block the kid, but to confront the kid, not even tracing, but straight up drawing inspiration from your work, in a community where copying one another is what the community was built on? Fuck off! I'm having a really hard time writing this script because I feel like a broken record repeating the same tune over and over again because I cannot tell you how many times we've already gone through this whole "it's not a crime to be inspired" drama in the animation meme community. Why is this happening again? Well, it's because Noi kept copying Spy out of spite. Yeah, Noi was. In fact, Noi even lied to Spy that he wasn't copying her, and then continued to copy Spy. Noi would give Spy apologies, and then immediately go back to copying Spy. But you want to know what bugs me a whole lot more than Noi copying and lying to Spy? The fact that throughout all the chats I could be bothered to read and remember, Spy would consistently only contact Noi in order to get them to stop copying her work. Why does it bother me that Spy is only contacting Noi to get them to stop copying her work? Isn't that a more private way to resolve everything? Yeah. for people who don't do it out of spite and for attention. The more I read from the doc, the more obvious it became that Noi kept copying Spy because Spy would notice and come back to talk to them to tell them to stop copying her. Noi would apologize, and the cycle repeats. Had Spy just kept Noi blocked, we probably wouldn't be here right now, and I could be doing something else with my break. Oh hey look, there's the proof that Spy talked with Noi in May of 2023. But even worse than that, and maybe I'm just missing something or I didn't see a screenshot because there was so much I had to go through, is that throughout her chats with Noi, not once did I see a message of Spy telling Noi that he shouldn't be viewing her work because 2 years ago, when this all started, she was still making openly suggestive work. Spy was keeping Noi blocked between contacting Noi as far as I can tell, and who knows, maybe she even told Noi to stay away from her work because it wasn't for kids. But the fact that she doesn't make mention of that in the doc at all, that she was making borderline NSFW pieces during the time Noi was stalking and copying her, I think speaks for itself where her priorities are. Before I go any further, I feel like I have to say this. Noi by no means is a perfect angel. In fact, they're quite the annoying kid to be dealing with. Noi likes to do things to get under people's nerves, and then blame the other person for reacting. In other words, Noi is a troll. I thought we'd learned the #1 rule on the internet was not to feed trolls. Noi also frequently enters adult spaces to interact with NSFW art, and whenever they get pushback from the adults uncomfortable with kids in those spaces, they turn around and try to say the adults are weird for talking to them, even though they're the ones who hide their age. Noi had arranged a raid on Spy's server, and seemed to be in the process of making some kind of expose video on Spy that would have been filled with half-truths and outright lies. Noi, by all means, is a shitty kid. But like, them being shitty does not negate the fact that they are a kid. Noi is being bratty and annoying and immature because they quite literally do not have the part of their brain that comprehends there are consequences to their actions. I think Spy's allowed to talk about being upset for having been harassed for years on end at this point. I think it's even perfectly valid to point out that someone has been copying work and getting under your nerves. I can think all that and still believe it is completely overkill to make a doc 110 pages long detailing every little thing that Noi could possibly have drawn slight inspiration from you on, because Noi doesn't know better, actually. They're a dumbass kid. You, Spy, are 27 years old this year. You should know better than to lead what is essentially a targeted harassment campaign against a kid over a ref sheet having a line of fucking drool from the mouth. No matter how much harassment Noi sends Spy's way, it will never be proportional or even comparable to the amount of harassment this doc and the video following it directed at Noi. If we're talking about how kids need to learn consequences from their actions, if you seriously think that a kid deserves this level of harassment, you need to go out and touch some grass. These are the comments I got under my thread. If people are willing to say this kind of shit to me, imagine the kind of shit they'd be willing to send to Noi. You and your idiot friend are proof children do not belong on the internet. Stay the fuck out of our spaces and out of our faces, and we wouldn't have these problems. It's that simple. So, how much were you paid by Bumble to make this post? You know, I'm going to be honest with you. Are you jealous or something? Do you just hate her because it's popular? Are you just a jackass who gets off yelling at random women? Grow the fuck up, basement baby. The fact you spent over 100 pages detailing every little thing this kid might have copied from you is absolutely unnecessary when you have a bigger issue on your hands. That being this very young child actively drawing and participating in communities that are highly sexual. But you don't even talk about that in this fucking doc, beyond mentioning it once in the first few paragraphs. Your primary priority was to make sure everyone knew this kid was copying and harassing you, not the safety and the well-being of the kid, who could very well be suffering from being fucking rude. What's worse is the standard you set here for Noi copying you, I guarantee, has already made its waves around the animation meme community for what now constitutes as plagiarism. Some of this stuff is literally just pose theft. It gets worse because the longer the doc goes on, whether Spy wants to admit it or not, Noi is trying to branch out from only copying Spy, and her examples get increasingly ridiculous, like, this person drew something with the same design theme as me, or this character vaguely resembles mine, guys. And I'm not going to mention that this character, who looks similar, is not only a recent design, but one character out of 4 that I think resembles my characters. Holy shit! They have characters that have the same names as mine? Oh no! If not for the fact that I can give the benefit of the doubt and say that a lot of this is probably copied because Noi has been shown to be spiteful, this in any other context would not even qualify as proof that you are being copied. Artists, especially young artists, will take aspects or sometimes even copy other artists' work to learn how to draw, and sometimes, yeah, this does involve an extended period of copying. Like, I drew entirely in the Powerpuff Girls art style for years. And you have to just let them, because young artists don't have the immense bank of inspiration and knowledge to draw from like older artists do. In fact, you are literally watching them build their bank in real time. Someone is going to die if I have to suffer through another pose theft drama. I feel like someone is going to try to say, oh, you're defending Noi with this point. No, Noi is clearly copying out of spite. This point was specifically written to offset anyone trying to use the Unknown Spy drama to attack and justify attacking other young artists who are copying to learn. And that's also just a message to Spy. You cannot keep demanding young artists who are inspired by you to stop. You have a massive reach. You're going to have fans who will obsessively copy everything you draw, and you're allowed to feel as uncomfortable as you want. I encourage you to block them even. But if you're so sensitive that you cannot take people copying everything you draw because they like your work and want to be like you, I don't recommend you post your art on the internet. And to any younger artists watching, I would encourage all of you to make it very easy for people to find whatever original image you took inspiration from, because crediting inspiration is also an essential part of being an artist. If you guys want to go more into detail with this doc, I'll leave a link to it below, because if I have to go over every single page on this doc in detail, I would go insane, repeating myself over and over again. Which is, funnily enough, going to be one of my last complaints about this doc. The fact that it is so goddamn long. Most people, upon seeing the page count is 100, will simply skim through the doc, look through all the pictures posted, and close out before reposting Spy's tweet, because from a quick skim, it does look like she has a point. There is absolutely no need to put this many examples to nail it home that Noi was copying Spy. And personally, this feels like an attempt to overwhelm the audience by saying, look at all this evidence I have to back up my claims, therefore I must be completely right to do this. Sorry, real last point actually, editing stream here. Plagiarism does not even describe this. Plagiarism would only apply the artist who was plagiarizing your work using it to their monetary benefit. This is why you don't go after fan artists. This is why you don't go after tiny artists who are literally children copying every single thing that they see their idol do. Take this to court, are you fucking crazy? Okay, editing stream here. There's so much shit that I keep forgetting to add it, but, you know, better late than never. So, when I saw this example that Spy gave of copying versus inspiration, I actually went to my Discord server and pinged all the artists there to give me their opinions on this. Mainly if they agreed that this top pose was copied and that these bottom poses counted as inspired. And unanimously, they agreed the top pose was inspired and the bottom poses were so entirely different, some of them didn't even consider them to be inspiration. So I think it says a lot about Spy that she thinks the only way you can justify being inspired by someone is if you make something completely different from them, not similar in any way except for one element, I guess, which is the fucking angle of the pose. But of course, that's not all this doc has to offer, because as I mentioned before, at the tail end of the doc is a link to another doc, specifically talking about Noi being in NSFW space. The warning before it links the doc demonstrates plenty well that your priorities are not actually concerned with the well-being of the child. Noi sharing NSFW art to minors in a server and interacting with 18+ accounts while being a minor. The language is antagonizing towards Noi because look, he's exposing other minors to porn and he's in NSFW spaces as a minor. Both of these things are bad, but Spy cannot seem to wrap her head around the reason why these things are bad. Let's go through the whole doc and discuss that. At the time of these screenshots, Noi was 14 to 15 years old. Does that mean they have a past to be racist and hateful? No, but you have to show first that they're hateful and or racist. Having gone through the entire doc and quite a few side accounts, I don't recall a single person being able to show that Noi was racist or even letting any particularly awful jokes be made. I could be wrong, but you have to prove that first, instead of just pointing to a vague server rule as a guilty admission, when as far as we know, no jokes worthy of being called such have ever been made. Spy is either being purposely obtuse or completely uncharitable when they say that Noi allows minors to share videos of themselves jorking it. What's their proof for this? One of Noi's rules, which again, seems more like an extreme example than actually allowing said behavior. Spy also purposely ignores the fact that Noi has acknowledged that there might be adults in a minor server to instead redirect blame back to Noi, the child, for having adults in their spaces. Of course, Noi isn't making it particularly easy for people to sympathize with them because they're openly being a shitty child. They will go onto NSFW Twitter spaces and interact with adults, and then when the adults call them out for being in an NSFW space, they'll try to paint the adult as a creep for talking to them. Noi should not be in these spaces, period, and I cannot fault any adults for being exasperated at Noi for what they're doing. This is one of those rare cases where this comic is an actual accurate depiction of what's happening. Noi, by all means, is not a great person, and had this doc simply warned adults not to interact with this kid, I would have no problems. But this doc keeps going and continues to paint Noi as an irredeemable piece of shit without considering other important factors. Noi is a child who's created a space with NSFW and other children. Noi is and has endangered other kids by putting them in a highly sexual environment. Nobody is denying that. But you cannot be holding a child to the same standard you would hold an adult for endangering kids in this way, because Noi is also actively endangering themselves. The difference between an adult having an NSFW server with kids in it in a highly sexual environment and a minor having an NSFW server with kids in it is the minor, Noi, does not know better than to not do this. Discord servers like this can desensitize kids to sexual topics and make it easier to be preyed upon by other adults. These servers that openly advertise having NSFW spaces and minors is also a hub for groomers and creeps. Groomers and creeps will not discriminate between the server owner and server members and will target all kids involved. This includes Noi. This brings to my age-old question of why the hell are you harping on a child for having groomers in their server instead of the groomers in that server when all the signs point to the very real possibility that Noi could have been victimized since all of this started. You cannot hold children to the same standards of adults when they have dangerous adults in their circles. And the fact that Spy's audience is more than willing to make fun of the potentially dangerous people surrounding this child, rather than being concerned those dangerous people are around said child, says a lot about how Spy has portrayed Noi in her doc. Should Noi stop running a server that allows NSFW? Absolutely. Noi endangering themselves does not negate that they have endangered others as well. And this is a point that should be addressed instead of the 100 pages of outfit theft allegations. Mind you, the majority of the stuff surrounding Noi being in adult spaces isn't even in Spy's version of the doc. You have to click onto a separate doc and a Twitter account for that information. You're telling me that you could be bothered to write 100 pages of content focused on art style theft, but not this? In fact, Spy, you're quite the hypocrite for calling out Noi for this stuff, when you are part of the problem. You shifted your content to being more family-friendly without privating any of your previously self-described NSFW work. You act as a gateway for children to discover what suggestive art even is, and through your history of posting such works, inspired kids to do the same because, oh, well, my idol is doing it, so it should be fine for me to do it too. It would be one thing if you had fully wiped out the borderline NSFW stuff you have on your pages, but you don't. And so in your current state, you contribute to the problem of introducing kids to suggestive spaces that could easily turn into NSFW spaces. You contribute to normalizing posting suggestive pieces where kids can see. Give predators an opportunity to target kids who post suggestive art because the fact that they post suggestive art is a beacon that they're easier targets as they've been partially normalized to this kind of shit. On some level, at least, Noi seems to have corrected this and gotten rid of the NSFW chats in their main server. I still feel like Noi shouldn't be posting suggestive art, as it tends to attract predators, and also encourages other kids in Noi's audience to do the same, which endangers all parties. On the topic of him interacting inappropriately with his friends though, This is a complete non-issue. People are usually more critical of these cases where minors are engaging in sexual conversation because it's occurring with another adult. Two minors, given that they are within a close age bracket, having sexual interactions with each other is not a bad thing. Who else are these minors supposed to have these interactions with? Other adults? Minors are allowed to figure out what they are with other minors. Should they be sending nudes to each other? No, but not because minors are bad for sending nudes. It's because it creates more TP that could be leaked and distributed to more depraved people. It's because the minors endanger themselves by sharing these nudes. Whatever Noi does in their private servers, in their personal life, is none of your goddamn business. Hey. Editing stream. While I was scripting, I took a look back at the new document Spy posted, and you'll never guess where I saw. Spy came back after she called out Noi in February, and added 10 more pages to the doc. Like, holy shit, this is just obsessive at this point. Why are you still keeping tabs on this kid after you called him out, if your goal was simply to call the child out for having plagiarized your art? How are you going to justify what is at this point the continued stalking of a child? Well, they haven't stopped copying me, so your solution is just to keep sending more and more people to harass this kid until they stop? This adding to the doc is continuing the cycle of Noi does something shitty, you give them attention, and they continue to be shitty. Make no mistake, Noi is playing a dangerous fucking game when they are basically calling people pedophiles, but again, that's a much more serious topic that you could be bringing more attention to instead of obsessively refreshing their page to see which OC of yours they've copied. Is that fucking background thing? Please stop giving Noi attention. Like, just block them and move on. That will solve the issue in a year or two. It just hasn't before because you keep fucking contacting them to tell them to stop. Moving on to Noi's response doc, there isn't a whole lot to cover. The doc is pretty incomprehensible to me as it's filled with a bunch of spelling and grammar mistakes that make it really hard to tell what Noi's trying to say. The broad strokes are as follows. Noi admits to having an NSFW chat along with NSFW roles that he gave to minors. He has since seemingly deleted those roles and chats in the server. Noi has also acknowledged that they have a problem with potential predators in their server and claims to be trying to fix them, even though I would argue it's safer for Noi and the other kids to simply delete the server and their current online aliases to prevent further attempts of predation. Noi has deactivated their NSFW Twitter account, claiming they will come back once they're old enough to do so. They've also admitted to using very sensitive topics in their story, like rape, without being knowledgeable enough to handle these sensitive topics with grace, and has since removed these elements from his story. And then, Noi, in stupid kid fashion, calls out another one of his ex-friends for being a shitty friend. I'm not gonna go over Spy's response document in detail, lest I drive myself crazier by repeating what I've already said, but I'll say it one last time. The only reason any of this evidence is valid hinges on the fact that Noi has been shown to maliciously copy people. Otherwise, the standards set in the school doc are not grounds in the future to call someone else for art style theft or whatever you want to call it. Cool. Okay, I'm so glad that's where this all ends.
So you can enjoy school.
On February 25th, 2024, a channel by the name of Happy Like a Wall, who has almost 300,000 subscribers, would upload a video titled "What's Up with Kids Online Nowadays?" that would very briefly go over the doc made by Unknown Spy. And as if that wasn't enough, Spy would also go on to repost Happy's video across her social medias, further boosting the video to an even larger audience. I have to put this into perspective for all of you. Two artists, both with followings in the hundreds of thousands, both adults, joined hands to dogpile this 16-year-old with no following in comparison, and instead of showing concern that a minor is around so many adults, encouraging them to be in NSFW spaces, make fun of and place responsibility onto the child for being in that position. To make it even worse, the caricature Happy drew of the minor in question that she put in her thumbnail not only has problems slapped across their face, but also has massive tits and censored nipples. Why would you draw them like this? If you had wanted to show they draw suggestive art, you could have easily picked from their many suggestive pieces. Why did you draw this? Despite the video doing the whole
disclaimer, this video features mature topics, including NSFW content and child endangerment. Please do not harass or contact any of the people mentioned. This video is purely educational. I don't want it to look like I'm salty at a child. I mean, I am, but for a good reason.
It will go on itself to bully Noi in the video.
What is this scoliosis looking back, bro? The arm is actually interacting with the boobs. It's pushing.
Yeah.
There is dimension to this, but this is just But, you can see how straight this is? Like, she just has a hole. There's cute and flirty. And then there is.
If you look at the entire image, it's obviously stylized, it's very exaggerated. So the arms being super round, it doesn't particularly stand out that much. But then you look over at the other character and I think she got tumors.
This is blatantly bullying a kid under the guise of moral crusading bullshit. The video also does not elaborate on the NSFW claims any more than Spy's doc, which was already minimal at best, but also goes on to lump Noi in with actual predators they believe to be in their server by mentioning how Noi is endangering his audience and then mentioning how there are groomers in his server, which associates Noi with the people who are potentially grooming him.
Not to mention, he undeniably has adults following him. When adults are encouraging you to draw NSFW as a child, that is grooming. He's got many minors following him too, which is problematic to say the least. Just remember, it is still child endangerment, even if you're a child yourself.
Also, Chief, I'm getting real tired of adults walking into spaces made by and for minors and complaining about how they hate minors.
A raging hypocrite and a minor? The best of both worlds. But a child sticking to their safe space, that's gotta be something.
Do not for a second pretend the animation meme community is not filled to the brim with kids and is a community made by and for kids. If anything, you and Spy are the invasive adults in this actual ball pit of children. Happy also likes to use language that victimizes the adults and places responsibility on Noi.
He knows what he's doing, and he removes minor from his bio whenever attempting to interact with unknowing adults.
He knows what he's doing! Yeah, he knows he's not supposed to be doing something. Any kid older than 3 can comprehend that they're not supposed to be doing something. But that does not automatically mean that he is aware of the consequences of his actions or even fully understands why what he's doing is wrong. Adults should not be blamed if a child slips into an adult space and starts interacting with them, especially if the minor then calls the adult a child for interacting with them when they started the interaction. I will state again, Noi is, by all means, a shitty kid. This is extremely irresponsible and dangerous for the adults they baselessly accuse. Shitty kid does not imply they should be treated as knowing better like an adult would just because they're fucking shitty. If you want to take them to task for this stuff, then focus on this. Oh, and Happy, your example of Noi copying you?
A few artists he's copying are Dives, Unknown Spy, Depixion, and Happy, possibly.
By far the weakest in the whole video. It is the same color scheme, cropped shirt and long sleeves, and that is where the similarities end. For someone who likes to call everyone else sensitive, you sure are doing no better yourself. Also, you cannot look me in the eyes and tell me after putting this in the video, you actually care for Noi potentially being groomed. It sure would suck if you were to later show evidence where people you've identified as adults are encouraging the hyper-sexual environment Noi's Discord server was.
Better words, this server is a raging cesspool of gooning minors. To make matters worse, there are adults present too. At the time, I was able to join and see for myself what was going on. Both children and adults were given NSFW access with roleplay roles at the same time. I can only imagine what that party could have been like.
And then, she finishes the video in a way that makes me want to tear my hair out.
I want to keep this short and simple. This is the physical embodiment of why children shouldn't have unrestricted internet access at a young age. They are literal pests and cannot fathom that some of their actions have consequences. It's always about protecting the children. And of course, I do agree, but who's gonna protect the adults?
So basically, ban kids from the internet?
She acknowledges that kids don't understand the consequences of their actions before asking, who's gonna protect the adults? Here's a novel thought. Maybe the adults should protect themselves on the account of the fact that, you know, they're adults. Ugh, this video is so bad. So after having been sent and watching the video, you could imagine I wasn't very happy with how the situation was developing. I was so unhappy, in fact, I actually quote retweeted Spy's original thread with a thread of my own, detailing exactly what I had problems with. I am so beyond disappointed in you. You're mobilizing your platform of thousands to pile onto a 16-year-old for spitefully copying your works for 2 years, with, as far as I can tell, almost no proof for direct tracing. Not only this, but you went on to promote a video made by someone with a platform, also in the thousands, to further pile onto this kid. A video that claims the minor makes false allegations and makes fun of the minor's art. There have been other kids, Sashley, who have handled intense copying better than you have, and you are over a decade older than she is. Kids are going to be stupid, mean, and they're going to be hypocritical because they're children. As an adult, you should know better than to flame them on your 900,000 plus platform. Block and move on. Nothing that's been shown in this document has been worth this call out. The worst thing this minor has done is endanger other minors and themselves by inserting themselves into adult spaces and sharing NSFW work. But that's not the reason you started this. You started this and focused on how they were copying your art. The fact you knew a minor was stalking your account and made any decision to unblock any of their accounts for any reason when you make suggestive and self-admitted NSFW pieces is a bigger problem than any petty copying the minor did. I would like to clarify if this was wrong. I missed the part in the doc where it did show evidence that the raid actually happened. Following this, Spy would block me, as well as Happy. Happy, however, would make a post about me, with me blocked, to make it seem like I didn't have a rebuttal for what she had to say. Unfortunately for her, she lacked to block my friend, who was actually the one who let me know Happy had made a response on Twitter to begin with. I thought that this was where it would end, because I did not intend to get dragged into drama when I was halfway through my midterms, but I also wasn't going to sit by and watch more and more people dogpile onto the situation. I was sent a few concerning posts regarding her interesting opinions, but at the moment, I didn't have the time to start more shit, and there were already more than enough people who would be able to educate Happy on why her opinions were shit. But, oh well, whatever, right? It'd be shitty of me to pull the whole guilt by association thing on Spy just because her friend refuses to be an adult and keep up with what's happening in the real world. I mean, in order to make another section in this video, Happy would have to be a raging hypocrite and also endanger minors on a regular basis by not taking the proper precautions to label her videos or her Twitter because it would interfere with her growth as a creator and therefore place her own well-being on top of literally thousands of children, which would also call into question why Spy would believe someone like that would be capable of handling her situation with Noi with the care it needed. Thank God nothing like that's happening. After I made my callouts, Happy actually unblocked me and asked if I wanted to talk, because they believed I was simply misinformed. And while I was busy at the time, I added them on Discord and we set up a date to talk. And then she didn't show up on that day, so we never talked.
Hi, it's Editing the Stream here again. While I was going back to get screenshots, I noticed that Happy actually had DM'd me back. I just, hadn't fucking noticed, so, this part of the video is also wrong.
A month or two later, I find Happy has invaded my Twitter timeline against my will. Users were spreading around her views on how a 15-year-old and a 20-year-old can date. And upon clicking on her profile, I found her posts were a lot more unhinged. I refuse to pay for Twitter again. The term pedo is watered down and solely used to ruin lives. While I do believe minors need to be protected, I also believe that everyone matures at different rates. Nobody is suddenly capable of making their life decisions at the mere second they turn 18. Age of consent is established to catch predators. That being said, I do think that, for example, a 15-year-old and a 20-year-old can be in love without wanting to have sex with children being the only motivator. However, I do think parental supervision and consent need to be involved for safety. Little edgy, but feel free to unfollow me because I'm asexual and draw NSFW sometimes. I have a boyfriend. I won't take part in boycotting for Palestine. I don't give a shit about politics. I strongly believe in two genders and I can't take some LGBT stuff seriously. I highly doubt some trans people are serious. I think a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old dating isn't pedo. I hate edgy, pretentious animal lovers who claim mankind sucks and animals are better. Autists have more often than not irritated me. If my views do not align with yours, feel free to unfollow. I want to cleanse my list and rather have like-minded people follow me. Really fucking ironic how you make a video about minors being exposed to and drawing pornography and then immediately 180 into a 15-year-old and 20-year-old can date. Having can date under specific circumstances, not have sex, different things, reading comprehension. I still don't promote sending porn to minors, focus on hating Noi instead. Add another screenshot to the Happy probably made her video to bully a child instead of out of any interest to help the child's well-being by talking about the dangerous behavior said child is engaging in pile. These posts bugged me especially because the age gap that Happy was talking about was the same age gap I had with my groomer. 5 years when I was 15 and she was 20. I made a short thread voicing my problems with Happy, and she would quote retweet me, specifying that she was a victim of grooming as well, and clarifying that she had originally meant to type 17 and 20. I too have been a victim of pedo supporter. While my opinions may be unethical to some, I do not do anything illegal, nor do I support the killing of kids. I have never willingly and or knowingly interacted with a child. I do not text or send people, as I literally experience no sexual attraction. I've been reluctant to even DM people because of the harassment I have faced. There's content I post in adult environments that are technically accessible by children, but I believe that it's a parent's responsibility. I have taken the appropriate measures that I could take. My original point was that I don't believe a 20-year-old dating a 17-year-old should necessarily be labeled a pedophile. However, when asked to elaborate, I made a typo and wrote 15. Knowing that I would be called out for lying and damage control if I were to correct myself, I just left it. Then the person deleted their question, removing all context. A pedophile is a person who specifically feels sexual attraction towards kids. Someone finding themselves unfortunate enough to be attracted to a single younger specimen shouldn't be dubbed as such under specific circumstances. They could be age regressed because of a developmental disorder. They might have been lied to and thought their partner was of age. Most importantly, they're not endangering kids on a playground, or are in possession of child pornography. We need to establish a clear line between the two. An honest mistake should not define the future of a person. Look at the Colby Carson situation, just to name an example. I'm all for protecting minors, but they have their own will and will do stupid things all the time. Regardless of the law, there's bound to be adults who don't follow the rules. That's why I established, whenever there is an age gap with a minor involved, that parental supervision is important. That way, it can possibly be ensured that intercourse isn't the motivator. And of course, I don't think they should be having sex, period. I'd rather educate them than berate the adult for making a really stupid mistake once, especially if it's something as mundane as a 3-year age gap. Our perception on whether an age gap is wrong or not is heavily based on our social stigmas and norms, which are known to shift all the time. The law is set in place to be able to catch child predators. However, there simply isn't a clearly established age at which a person matures enough to make their own decisions. That's likely the reason that it varies from country to country, and even state to state. And yes, countries outside of the great United States of America do exist, and your specific law does not apply outside of there. Morally, it makes no sense to want to break down a 20-year-old creator for dating a 17-year-old. But simultaneously, should be fine with a 28-year-old dating someone of the exact same age gap. While it might be in poor taste, in my country, you can still have sex with a 16-year-old and you'd still be considered a child entering your 20s. Context matters. Calling me a pedophile based on this, an opinion that doesn't even apply to myself as an asexual, who doesn't even speak to people, isn't only ignorant and oblivious, it also shows that these people will do anything for relevance, including throwing around words they don't understand the weight of, completely overshadowing real victims of child abuse, myself included. Giving Happy all the benefit of the doubt that I can muster up, let's say that she had meant to type 17 and 20, and consider her statement. A 3-year age gap is not always dangerous or inherently predatory, especially in cases where the two parties met as kids. We already went over this in the original Spoctor drama, so if you want a more in-depth explanation, go watch Ponder's video going over it. Even with this in mind, the statement goes on to hypothesize about a situation where there is a bigger age gap that could be considered dangerous, and then victimizes the adult, because, well, what if the attraction is an unfortunate one-time thing? One-time thing? And so the adult shouldn't have their life ruined over it? Because forget the kid who has already had their life ruined over it by being in a relationship where the power was completely unbalanced, and they would be, by the definition of a power imbalance, have been taken advantage of by an older adult. It is a completely separate issue if the adult is lied to about the minor's age, so long as the adult cuts contact and does not further develop a relationship with the minor. Yeah, don't call them a fucking pedophile. But if the adult is feeling things for a kid after learning about the kid's age, you know what should have been done? The adult should have sought therapy and stopped interacting with the child. There is never an excuse for an adult with a significant age gap with a child to then go after that child. The law does not care how lonely you are. We should not be catering to the adults who don't follow the rules when the adults are the ones who should know better. You can't acknowledge that there's enough of a power imbalance to need parental supervision to make sure nothing bad happens, and then go on to place responsibility on the child and the parents because the kids will have a will of their own, instead of criticizing the adult who is willing to take advantage of a child. Thank you also for one of your only arguments against me was to call me a stupid American, pushing my own morals onto other people when the context is different in other countries. I'm so tired of arguing with Americans when all they want to do is force the rest of the world to uphold their standards. I am literally a Chinese-Canadian immigrant. I do not need the cultural context to see the holes in your argument. Please don't use the fact that you have been victimized in the past as a way to deflect from having to face that your logic is not only very flawed, but also typically the kinds of arguments real abusers use to justify their actions. You might not be an abuser yourself, but by continuing to repeat these sentiments, you are absolutely spreading the mentality that abusers rely on to get away with their crimes, especially by levying your status as a victim to give credit to these claims. Calling Happy a pedophile for this is factually incorrect. Given that she's mentioned she's a victim herself, it's entirely possible that she just hasn't had the opportunity to undo some of the mentality her abuser may have used against her. Pointing out the fault in her arguments is fine, but throwing around such a heavy label is disrespectful to people who have actually suffered from this kind of abuse. Happy has since updated this section in her Google Docs, and I'm putting the updated version of the statement on the screen right now. Unfortunately, even with the update, not much of her original statements have changed other than the fact that she specifies the youngest a child that can be targeted acceptably is 16. There are other issues in the doc that I don't feel qualified to speak on, particularly her comments about people on the spectrum as well as her section on trans people, targeted specifically to those who are non-binary and gender fluid. I'll link the doc in the description so you guys can judge for yourselves. I wish we were done, but we're not. Remember how I brought up how it would be really bad for Happy to be endangering kids by not properly labeling her content until very, very recently, when she was harping so hard on how Noi was introduced to adult spaces in the first place? This screenshot was taken during February of this year, where Happy states that her channel is 16+. Even if I close my eyes and try really hard to ignore how some of this content is really pushing that 16+ label, she had her Twitter linked, and her Twitter at the time had no indication it was 18+, and yet Happy would openly favorite and post NSFW works on this account. She would do this while interacting with accounts who were minors, by the way. Lucy would have been 15 when they submitted this fan art. And you want to go around and talk about how minors shouldn't be in NSFW spaces when you've contributed to the endangerment of minors this openly? Seriously? And even if I ignored all of that, your videos that you have stated should be for a 16+ audience are not labeled anywhere as such on the actual videos. Not the titles, not in the videos, not the descriptions. The only place where it's labeled is your channel bio. This doesn't work though, because YouTube doesn't work like Twitter, where putting that in your bio is the same as putting it in your posts. Because YouTube channel bios are not treated the same as Twitter bios are. In order to find more of a Twitter user's work, you have to click on their profile to find more, if you haven't been a long-time follower. And the first thing you see is the bio, which is why putting it in Twitter bios works and is efficient. Fucking no one checks YouTube bios. If you're looking for a trigger warning or the age rating of a video, people look in the titles, descriptions, fuck, even the comments is better. If you really want to make sure that no one under your target audience is exposed to this kind of stuff, that really borderlines if or not it's 16+, you would put it in the title or description, and you even acknowledge that. You just don't, because you're worried it'll cap the growth of your channel. While Twitter had 100,000 followers and was growing at a rapid pace, my YouTube was falling massively behind, with around 10k subscribers. During the time, I catered to children. I only had 2,000 to 5,000 subscribers. I only blew up shortly ago, after a Roblox-themed short unexpectedly went viral with over 8 million views, and then another short explaining why my character doesn't wear clothes. This latter video pops up whenever looking up Roblox no clothes, no blur. Clearly a very childlike search inquiry, and has nothing to do with the actual video. Kids self-reporting as underage have been flocking to my channel since. Despite all that, YouTube analytics shows a great majority of my viewer base is over 18, thus meaning that age-gating my content would do nothing except kill my growth. All this while she's posting to a community known for being inhibited by kids. YouTube analytics does jack shit to disprove this because they are not a reliable source of data, given kids always lie about their age when signing up for accounts on social media. You would have to be blind to claim ignorance to the fact that this community consists mostly of children. Oh, yeah. Also, something promoting an NSFW Patreon to a channel that produces content that appeals largely to kids. Just, if you're gonna make NSFW, can you please keep your safer work stuff and NSFW stuff more separate? Maybe it's not malicious intent. Maybe it's just pure ignorance as to how YouTube works. I don't fucking know. Maybe I'm completely wrong in this video. I could be if there's evidence I've missed. But as it stands, with the facts that I have right now, Happy, you are the last person equipped to talk about Noi and their situation. I'm so tired of the animation meme community. Of a community literally built off of copying other people, falling over and over and over again into drama like this. I'm so tired of literal adults starting witch hunts on kids, especially when the problem could have been solved about 3 block buttons ago.
No spy evading the blocks you put on Noi
To continue to stalk them to see if they're copying you does not count as having them blocked. Unknown Spy's entire document hinges upon the fact that Noi has been proven to be spiteful, because otherwise, most of these examples she brought up would not stand on their own 2 feet. In fact, I would like to argue that Spy's definition of copying is completely unfair. This whole situation has been so unnecessary and painful to slog through, because it's already happened a quintillion times in the AMC. If this isn't the last video I make about a situation like this, the next people who create a she stole my art style situation are going to be dragged into my basement and forced to listen to Megalovania until their ears bleed. Before I end this video, I'd like to clarify that I do not believe Happy is a pedophile or anything of that kind. The section on her was mostly to point out how she, of all people, are not qualified to criticize and demonize Noi for what happened and what's happening in their server.
As if I need to state the obvious again, Noi has a lot of things that they need to change, none of which was properly addressed in this drama. Instead, their faults were tacked on to art style theft allegations to make him appear as an irredeemable piece of shit. Noi seems to be on the right track by removing the NSFW from his public server, but I hope he stays out of suggestive and NSFW spaces on his public platform until he is an adult capable of making these decisions.
Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one, whenever that may be. Bye! Hey! It's me again. I would say sorry that I haven't uploaded in like 5 months, but you guys are used to this by now, right? I have some bad news. My PC is kind of dying. Like, really badly. I almost couldn't make this video because my PC physically could not render it. I managed to force my way through it, but I'm not sure I'll be able to do it the next time I want to make another video. If you guys want to help, I have a Patreon set up where you can support me, and by that I mean give me money, and I will post my art files as well as sneak peeks and bloopers for my videos. If you're looking to commission me, my information is in the description alongside my Ko-fi. Thanks for sticking around, by the way. I can't tell you guys how much it means to me that I can come back and upload after months of silence, and still know you guys are there waiting for me. You're all cool as hell. Take care.